seriously going wrong or anything, but I'm ready to move to a new level, and it's just, I have a dining table, just a round dining table, and it's just covered.
Oh, yeah.
Every day I say, are you gonna go through all them?
I have the same thing, the dining room table is a collectible, you know?
Yeah. Did you come to the concert, to the
No,
jazz
I
concert?
don't like jazz.
Oh, it was really good.
I came,
It was good.
I tried it a couple of years ago, and this is not my thing. So.
I thought of it just now because I sat in the front row, because, well, we didn't, I arrived at Barlow, we weren't particularly late or anything, but it was pretty full when we got
Yeah.
there. So I sat in the front row, and the drummer was right there.
Oh, wow.
And you know something? It was amazing.
Yeah?
Yeah, it was fun to watch.
Yeah.
Then the flutist was great,
Yeah.
flautist.
Yeah.
I don't know if everybody says flautist or flutist.
Well, and he said it on Sunday, flautist, somebody did it.
Yeah, I think you did.
I
And then the bassist, and then it had a bass and piano. It was really, it was a big success. Now,
There are a lot of people that like jazz, but I just never got into it.
yeah, well, I don't listen to it at home like I wouldn't listen to it on the radio. Maybe I haven't at some point, but it's not so. I just, mostly I just listen to CDs or,
I like music I can remember the tune of, you
Yeah.
know, I can't.
Yeah, you
Jazz,
can't.
except for Dixieland jazz.
no, you can't. Yeah, I'm glad I put my warmer coat on.
So I'm supposed to go up to 61 today. I'm thinking it's 61 now. It's not.
Okay,
It's
I don't think so.
44.
Yeah.
So,
Had a group of real scholars that we sing reformed ministers.
So the-
do they all look like you? No.
No, I think they should be psychiatric.
Oh.
Hi. How are you, Ellen?
How are you, Mark?
I'm fine, thank you.
I'd walk into a room, and we met every quarter.
Me. Who am I? No.
Where am I?
Where am I?
Yeah, I was part of this group that met every quarter in Rhinecliff. That's how I got to know this area, actually. And it was scholar pastors.
Oh.
Where were you coming up from? Or,
From Peacock, Gladstone, New Jersey,
oh, wow.
Somerset County.
You've been a lot of different places.
Yeah, I know. Well, I get kicked out, and then I had to find a job.
Maybe you have to move far enough away so that the word didn't get around to
That's right. That's exactly right. So they met every quarter. They did that for years. We had a physicist who was a Reformed Church minister. We had somebody that graduated or got his PhD from Oxford, and really smart, peculiar group.
Kind of
And
like
they-
a Mensa,
What's that?
a Mensa for pastors.
I don't know. what that-
Mensa. Mensa.
The
high IQ.
Well, no wonder I don't know it.
Haven't solicited you to know.
Yeah. Well, then they invited me. They were all kind of like, well, old enough to be my brothers and uncles. I was the kid. They called me the kid. Or when I walked into the room, there was about 10 of them. They would say, "Well, here comes God's little disappointment."
Oh, no.
I walked in the room.
And you went back?
That reminds me of a certain author who he has a book title that's very similar to that. He's a Jewish guy who came from Russia and they moved to Queens. Oh, I can't remember the book title, it's something like that.
Yeah, I was the underachiever of the group. But they would every quarter, they would meet for 24 hours at this monastery. And they would read papers that they're working on, research. And at the end of every year, there's a journal called Perspectives, it's a Reformed rag, theological journal. And they would publish everyone in that group.
That's great.
Yeah, it was pretty impressive. Yeah, so a lot of my old teachers were editors, and
Oh, wow.
it was pretty intimidating. Yeah, it was. So anyway, God's a little disappointed.
Well, it's better than being this big disappointment, right?
That's right, it was just a little disappointment, right? I still function. All right, so we're going to take a look at Job 15. We're going through we're going to look at, you know, these responses from his friends, and 15 is the next one. And I want to just kind of preface this by talking a little bit about worldview. Does anyone, when you hear the word, that phrase, worldview, is that familiar at all?
Say that again?
Worldview.
Yeah.
Somebody's worldview.
Yeah, I've heard the phrase a lot.
Yeah, I taught a course at Marist a number of times, and worldviews and values is one of their core courses. And trying to break down a worldview for the students. And so when that comes to mind, I'm sorry we're full. Sandy. I'll bet your car's clean and clearing road cars. You can see them a mile away. No offense, I mean that. Anyway, we're talking about worldviews. So, oh, for God's sake.
Another
Yes.
straggler?
You didn't see Diane DeGroat out there, did you? No. She's staying after. Worldviews. A worldview. There are maybe 6 or 7 major worldviews that are on offer throughout history. And can anybody say anything about a worldview? What does it constitute? What does it mean? Somebody's got a worldview.
Well, you could say people's concept of what's right and wrong.
Okay, what's right and wrong? Okay, all right, good. All right, anybody else? I'll help you a little bit. It's a global term. It has to do with one's global philosophy, and every single person has one. They might not know what it is, or they might not be able to tease it out because they haven't had the chance. But everybody's got one, and they are a worldview will try to answer major questions. How do things begin? How do things end? Right? Big. That's my lighter. Forgive me. That's a big question, right? How did things begin? How did things end? How will they end? Another one, there's a bunch of basic questions that will fill out a worldview, and the idea is that the worldview that fills things out the best is the best worldview. So, how are things broken? How are things restored? Okay? What is life? What is death? What is a human being? You know, these are all big worldview questions. Does that make sense? Yeah? What constitutes truth? What is justice? What is it? These are all, there's a bunch of them, but, right? There's a bunch of worldview questions that that we consider either consciously or unconsciously. You see what I mean? We all have those questions in us. That's what makes humans humans. One of the things. And I heard that. And to the degree that we can answer those satisfactorily, we then have more of a complete, it's never complete, but more of a complete worldview. Now, the ones that I've just listed, how many of those are kind of congenial to the Christian church?
Most of them.
Yeah. And that's why Christianity is a pretty good worldview. Pretty good. What about Judaism? Do they handle those questions? Those are,
They address those.
they do, yeah, they do. And so you can kind of start to see how certain religions, let's say, or philosophies have been dealing with these sorts of things for millennia, many of them. And some aren't as good, or they're not as complete, or they ask different kinds of questions. It's really kind of interesting to kind of ask a kid who's 19 about these questions. So that was really my job at Marist. One of the courses I taught was to ask these questions of these kids, and to try to bring what might be unconscious to to consciousness.
Did they tend to agree with each other?
No,
That's curious.
it's made it fun, right?
Yeah.
Made it interesting. Yeah.
Was it hopeful? Your views hopeful?
For some, I would say, yeah, for some. But you could already see kids start dying. They start dying here,
Mm-hmm.
and you could see that's kind of a fulcrum, I would say, for kids right before they go into junior high and right when they kind of enter college. I've seen that where you kind of lose hope. Not true of it all, but so.
Is there something you can do when you see that happening? I mean, what?
No,
is
just
there
a
any-
tough luck. I don't care.
There's nothing, yeah. I mean,
You're doomed.
in your class, if you saw it now, I mean, was there some way you approached it to
Well, I think.
give them more hope?
Well, one of the things I wanted to do is for each student. And I had big classes. I'd have 60 kids.
Mhm.
So I wanted them to hear each other. So we're going to talk about justice. So what is justice? And you hear it from this kid and that kid and this kid, student, I should say. But and I think that's a great way to learn, is just to listen to other people, and get their slant on this. But yeah, and some students would say, they're all the same. So we would talk about Nazism. What is a person? How do things end? How are things broken? And then apply it to that system. And then it becomes pretty clear it's not a very good system. It's not a very good worldview. Unless you want to be a Nazi.
Did you have any kids that wanted to be Nazis in your classes? Maybe they wouldn't admit it.
No, none would admit it. No, no.
Do you think that may be different today?
Mhm.
You're teaching that same class?
Mhm.
I do,
Mhm.
yeah.
I do. But it's a good class, and I kind of wanted to teach it here too, but I never got around to it. I'm bringing all this up because the three friends of Job all come to him with a worldview.
Are they different from each other, or?
They're not.
No,
They have
okay.
different. They have different aspects. They have different aspects that they apply when they are speaking to Job. And we're going to see that in a minute. Starting with 15, chapter 15. I think 17 is the other one. Anyway, I'm just making stuff up, but 15 for sure. So you've got these three friends that are coming in, and they have a worldview. And I don't know if you've ever changed your worldview to one of these big questions, but it's not easy to alter, amend, transform one of these big questions that you've kind of settled on the answer. It's not easy. We're going to see this on Easter. Death is death, and that's just the way it is. Our guy, Jesus, is dead. He's in the tomb, blah, blah, blah. No, he's not. That's a tough shift. Even if you saw him, people would say, I don't really believe that. This is something else. He's somebody else. He's they're coming up with, other alternatives because they're going to hang on to their worldview, which says people who die stay dead. You see what I mean? So it's an assault. The risen Jesus is an assault on our worldview, right? I think that's fair to say that, whether you believe it or not. It's an assault. The message of the resurrection of Jesus is an assault. So these guys that we're gonna meet, one of the things that is fused into them is God cannot be a party to cruelty. Right? Are we on board with that? These three friends, that part of their worldview is not going to change. Because God will give to each person what they deserve. God would never give someone a catastrophe like we've seen with Job. God would never do that unless there's a reason. There's got to be a reason. And they're not going to let go of it. You'll see. They will not let go of this.
So then they don't believe God is all-powerful and responsible for everything.
Well, they do. So there must be something wrong with this guy, this Job. There must be something terrible. Otherwise, God wouldn't have done it.
Oh, I see.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Job did something wrong.
Yes, he's got to come into him. Or we're gonna rake for other reasons. Maybe it's Job's parents, I don't know, or maybe it's
The sins of the father.
right. The sins of the father will come down, and generation to generation, that kind of thing. You're right. So so you start raking for reasons. It must be this or it's that. No, it's not that. It's got to be this.
You waste time doing that.
Pardon me?
You waste time looking for reasons.
Right, and you
have the faith.
right, yeah, and you take. I think one of the lessons of this book is compassion. Even if you do know, even if there is a reason, we have compassion. That's not judgment, not isolation, right? So, but the idea of, and you might want to check your own, during the day or something, if you come to it. When you're smoking on your porch, for instance, you can think about some of these big questions that make up, and you can Google this too. You'll get a list of questions that frame out a worldview. You can take a look at those and just say, how difficult would it be for me to change my answer to that big question? It's huge. So. What is life? Let's take a little walk in Palestine. We've got Reformed Church ministers in Palestine right now.
Just checking things out?
No, they're walking kids to school.
Oh, that's nice.
Crosshairs.
You mean in Gaza or in...
Gaza. They're in Gaza. Taking Palestinian kids to school. We've been there for 100 years. So, yeah. Some of our best ministers are in Gaza right now, taking kids to school. Yeah. What is life? What is justice? What is fairness? Things like that. They are hugely important matters. And I would say, the Christian church, the Christian message with regard to worldview, and I would say the Jewish understanding of worldview are similar. They're not getting meted out very well in the Middle East right now, but we've got our own problems. You can see it. It's a battle of worldviews all over the place, and it's always been like that. That's nothing new, but we have guns now, so it makes it a little more dangerous. Okay? All right? Okay, well, let's take a look at it then. Well, this is the sort of things that the writers of Job have in mind. Worldview. Do we get what's coming to us? Is God just? Is God cruel? These are big, right? These are big ticket items as far as the worldview is concerned. Okay, well, we got all Eliphaz, the Temanite, stepping up to the plate here. We're going to see what he has to say. 15, 1 through 6. So, Mary Jane, did you raise your hand?
Sure.
Oh, you're going to get us down over there.
You want me to say those words? Then Eliphaz, the Temanite, answered, should the wise answer with windy knowledge and fill themselves with the east wind? Should they argue in unprofitable talk or in words with which they can do no good? But you are doing away with the fear of God and hindering meditation before God. For your iniquity teaches your mouth, and you choose the tongue of the crafty. Your own mouth condemns you, and not I. Your own lips testify against you.
Okay, so he's talking to Job, right? Everybody on board with that? He's talking to Job. What's he saying?
That he's not such a great guy after all.
That's right.
It's his fault.
We're going to do some raking.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to do some raking.
This
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah, this whole thing about wind, this actually could also be flatulence in the Old Testament. It kind of goes, it could be interpreted that way too. You know, you broke wind. Did you ever hear that when you were a kid? Yeah, that's how Michiganders talk. Yeah, the wind. Yeah, you're just blowing smoke. You've got fancy words, but there's something wrong here, and he will not be fooled. What's the worldview? Something is wrong with you.
You get what you deserve.
You get what you have, you get what you deserve,
You get what you ask for.
Yeah, you've been asking for it even. And now you're just talking, Job has these long discourses, right? He goes on and on about how horrible it is. I'm sure it is horrible. But, so he's going on, and his friend won't have any of it, right? Yeah, you're just blowing smoke.
Seems like these guys really didn't know him very well, or did they, We don't know that. They say they're his friends, but I don't know. I would hope my friends wouldn't think of me.
That's a good point. I mean, when I go back to Michigan, there's a lot of evangelical Christians are in Michigan, right? And a lot of them, many of them are my friends. And after they interrogate me, when I snuff out my cigar, they will say, well, you've just been backsliding. That's the word they use. I love that word, by the way.
Oh, that's a southern word. Yeah.
Is it? Well, it's Michigan. Oh, it's Michigan too. You've just been backsliding. I mean, how can you possibly? And there it is, right? They've got, right? You're interfacing. You're interfacing with somebody else's worldview. This is what you must be if you're a minister. This is the look. This is how you're going to talk. This is how you're going to dress, and wear your hush puppies. Ministers in Western Michigan wear hush puppies, and so on, right? And what's the deal with the cigar? Stop blowing it in my face, that sort of thing. And it's their worldview, and this is something to consider. Like what Helen was saying, our worldview will keep us from intimacy with other human beings.
Did you say like helmsing? What did you say, like helmsing? Oh, never mind. I couldn't understand what you said just before.
Well, I didn't understand it myself, and I was speaking. So maybe you got it. Yeah. So I mean, will our worldview keep us from knowing? Will it keep us from compassion? I think underneath this book, this is the question. This is what they're getting at. Job is not a real person. It's a real story about real truth. And one of the truths that they're trying to ferret out is, can compassion win the day rather than cause and effect? It's a good question, right? We all have it.
Well, don't you think the church today have at least two different world views of,
Sure.
the way they, and the country as a whole
Yeah.
has two different world
Yeah.
views.
Yeah.
And, they think they have the truth.
This book of Job is being lived out. I think it's one of the tests of truth, let's say, with a capital T or a little smaller case T. Is what's being said valid for all time? You can go back in history, you can go forward in history, and it's still a compelling story. Right? I mean, 9/11, that happened. Evangelicals were saying that happened because there are so many gay people in New York City. Cause and effect, see? Oh yeah, that was big. Yeah, oh yeah, that was on television, blah, 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 and all that. Pat Robertson, they're some of the nicest people on earth. Yeah, right? So they're going to hang on to their worldview, right? That's what they do. That's what we all do. You hang on to your worldview, you see an event, and then you say, okay, who sinned? Well, obviously New York City puts up with gay people, so that's why it happened. Mm-hmm. Right? Or you can just go the other way. I think what they're saying here is go with compassion. You might not know the cause and effect, if any, and get in there and try to help. Right? Those are the two possibilities out of Job, I believe. But one's worldview will determine it.
Well,
Remember?
is there any way of getting the two world views to decide on a truth, a factual truth together? I mean,
Well,
if there's any way to do it.
well, for me, it's the event of Jesus, his teaching, his teaching,
Right.
his action while he was alive. It has to do with his death. If that death, his death, has also something to do with us. That's right. That's part of my worldview. And then what is the resurrection, whether physical or metaphysical or whatever it is, does that play into any of our action? Our action. If we enter into that as part of our worldview. I mean, there's some people who say that's hooey, it's a lie, whatever, the resurrection. But my idea is, well, the idea, I've bought into it too, is if there is a resurrection from the dead, then I think it's wise for us to listen to the person who was resurrected. That makes sense? Right? I mean, that's pretty impressive in my view. So it's not just that Jesus is resurrected and is alive, but that what he stands for also is alive.
How can the church's worldview of that get so tainted?
I think.
I mean, they are following Jesus.
No. They couldn't give a damn about Jesus. No, as far as what he spoke and what he did. The evangelicals, not all of them, but many of them, the ones that are in power, let's say, the ones that are in power, the function of Jesus is to be on a cross, dying for our sins so we can go to heaven. That's why Jesus exists. That's it. We're not interested in what he has to say. No. But as I said before, if somebody is raised from the dead, you might want to listen to them. I think that makes horse sense to me, right?
So they don't, in other words, the evangelicals are not forgiving and tolerant. They're the opposite of that.
No, well, they can be forgiving. If you accept Jesus Christ as your personal Savior, you will be forgiven. But if you don't, we're not gonna.
But they're saying you will be forgiven by God, but
Right.
they're not going to forgive you.
Well, they might also, yeah, they may, right. We're not gonna forgive you, but God might, right? There's some truth to that, because they'll go back, you'll hear this, and again, not all. Let's not get too big of a brush here. Many would say, you still have to pay for that. What you did has consequences, and those consequences will be paid for. Right? Rather than, let's just start over, and can't we, have a new day here.
So that's like the Catholic perception of purgatory.
Yeah, but we'd like to move that here on earth.
Huh?
Purgatory's here on earth. Seriously.
How would they think people should pay? Just by suffering?
Yeah, suffering and misery, and so you go through. Yeah, it's a pretty harsh reality, and yeah, I've heard that many times over the course of my life. Yeah. We love Jesus. He's going to get us into heaven, and we would like it very much if he'd keep his mouth shut. Blessed are the poor in spirit, not interested. Blessed are those who grieve, not interested. Blessed are those who are meek, not interested. Blessed are the peacemakers, not interested. So that sort of thing. And I would say it's out of a sense that worldview is out of a sense that we want life to make sense. We want cause and effect. Otherwise, there's chaos, right? We want our actions to mean something. You see where I'm going? So I can sympathize with that. I can. Cause and effect. If some meathead is going to smoke cigars all day, he might have a little problem medically down the road. Cause and effect. You see what I mean?
Is that a big thing for evangelicals, smoking, or is that just...
No, they would point that at my direction.
Oh, just
But to which I would say, I'm going to look great without lips.
just one more of your defects in other words.
Yeah. So there's compassion to it, but there's a limit to it. Like, okay, you made your bed, now you have to sleep in it.
Well, you don't inhale cigars, do you?
Not often.
Just trying to redeem you a little bit.
Thank you. See, that's the compassion. We'll take that one.
Southeastern Michigan.
Yeah, southeast. Yeah,
Yeah,
a bunch of liberals over there in the Detroit area. So, So okay. So we got that. So this friend is there's a slightly different angle, right, to it. So he's saying, well, you're just giving us a bunch of gobbledygook, nice phrases. You're so poetic, that's great. But the issue is you've turned your back on God. That's the issue. Job. You see it? If you hadn't turned your back, this never would have happened.
So even though there's no proof of the actions that he did,
Right.
they discount,
Because my worldview has to stay intact. If it doesn't, I'm going to have a cognitive dissonance. And I won't be able to sleep at night. I will be a wreck. I can't, I mean, just for a good example would be St. Paul, right? He's going to Damascus. This guy's got a worldview, right? And we're going to bring my little hammer, and we're going to express the worldview to the good people of Damascus, the church of Damascus. And then something happens to him that just torches his worldview. And even in that story, remember that the church in Damascus, I mean, they were not thrilled to receive him, but they did. And he stayed there, I want to say 3 years. Was it something like that? Please check me on that, because that's probably not true. But let's say 3 years. A year to 3 years. And what were they doing? They were helping him change his worldview.
He couldn't talk, right?
At least in the beginning, right? Yeah, which was probably great, because he had to listen, and they had the church in Damascus had things to say. And this is how your worldview needs to change.
And that's part of the reason Jesus came. Because what if the story of Job took place after Jesus? Hopefully.
I kind of want to say it is happening. It happens over and over, because it's
We
this.
still don't.
We're still doing it.
We don't learn from the example.
We don't learn. Yeah. Yeah. I find compassion. Well, you all know this by now, but I'm a horrible Christian, which is one of my gifts to you. So you all feel better about yourselves. But it's compassion is really difficult. It can be.
You can learn how do you get compassion.
I think you cozy up to Jesus. That's theological, I would say spiritual, and the other is people can teach you how to do it, because there are some people out there that are terrific at it. There are several of you out in here that I know are like that.
Could you say that the conversion experience, or whatever you want to call it, at that point, would a person change his worldview?
I think the beginning can. I mean, people are different. Some people report a very dramatic change of worldview, for sure. I've heard that for sure.
Yes.
And others, are more things change over time. I think there are also those of us. I'm a little bit like this, where it's like a heartbeat. You see it on the monitor. I get it. I don't get it. I get it, I don't get it, I get it, I don't get it. And you hope it's sort of going like that, over time, you hope so. We need, well, I think some people are just compassionate anyway, they grow up that way, but for me, and then maybe the rest, others, they struggle with it, yeah. Because you do want, I think there's value to having first causes, isn't it? When I worked at the hospital, we were digging like crazy to try to figure out why these kids were having such a hard time. So we dig and dig and dig into their past and their families and their, to try into their biology, trying to figure out what is causing this. It was like a puzzle. Every kid that came in was like a puzzle. You had to figure it out. So that was part of the excitement of working there. Try to figure it out. And then, what do we do about it? What do you do? That was Pine Rest. That's where I worked. Interesting.
Don't you think it's sort of normal for everyone to change their worldview throughout their lives? Or I certainly, my worldview has changed like flip-flopped from when I was
Really? Okay.
young. I don't know about anybody else, but it seems like time changes all of these things that you think you are, and then you realize, wait a minute,
been in
I
some.
wasn't too on the ball with that, you know? And you have to start thinking about things in a different way. It's been my experience in several hard times in my life, and I just wondered if, is everybody that way, or is it just me? I don't know.
Change.
Yeah, we all do, I'm
That's because you're women.
I think.
I'm not kidding. I think women are more open to
I do too.
life and living than men are. Men close down. More likely, men will close
But I
down.
think you can have compassion stronger in some areas than other areas
Okay.
at the same time.
All right, yeah.
Where it's-
Well, you see that like at the southern border, where it
Yeah.
really, you really get a light on it, that we have compassion about our neighbors and about our family and blah, blah, blah. I'm sure they all do, right? Or most of them do, the great majority of them do, of course. But these people we want to shoot and kill, right? So compassion has a wall, right? You will not go over there. I mean, the early church was like that too, with the Gentiles, non-Jews. It was like Jesus came to save, the Jewish nation and blah, blah, blah. They're all talking like that. Church in Jerusalem. Jesus' mother, Jesus' brother, they were running the show in Jerusalem after Jesus. And they were real Jewish minded, he's the Messiah for the Jews. And then Peter goes out and Paul goes out and they said, hey, there's a world out there. It's people that wouldn't mind hearing some good news, right? So you have to, your compassion, your gospel, your good news has to be somehow translated over your wall. And in our case, literally over the wall, over the river, over the, it's over. And, a lot of America, I would say, is struggling with compassion, really struggling with it.
There's a commercial that bothers me. It's the ability to call up and get the drug for free that takes you out of an overdose of fentanyl.
Oh yeah, we have it here.
Nexalone or something like that?
But I think for me, it seems like it's losing the compassion to help somebody before they get to that point.
Well, you're right. You're right. Yeah, it's a last ditch effort. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I agree with that. We have it here.
Good to know.
Yeah. We got the paddles too. We got the paddles too.
I can find
If you
it.
fall over, either fentanyl or your heart, we might be able to help you.
And Stewart's,
Do you know how to use it?
they have nice.
We've been trained on all
You
that.
need it.
It's right by.
Could it just,
Don't tell anybody.
if there was a disclaimer with the commercial that said, call this number if you need help before you get.
Well, there you go. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, for sure.
That would make me feel
Yeah,
better about.
right.
But it's like, oh, don't worry about it if you overdose.
Narcan,
You're lucky
Narcan.
enough to have Narcan
Yeah,
around.
Narcan. Yeah.
You'll get it and you'll be
Yeah.
okay.
Well, it's not just people using, it's also,
People that don't know what they're taking.
right, well, it's police officers, they grab a car handle that's got fentanyl on it, they're going down.
Really?
Oh yeah, it'll kill you like that, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's like a pinpoint.
I've met state troopers that have done it, Narcan to their colleagues after they touched they went down. Oh yeah. I didn't know that either until like a year ago.
Wear gloves.
You gotta wear gloves, you gotta be really careful, yeah, around,
Plastic, whatever.
right. So if you're going to handle car doors here at church, we're set to help you.
What is it? Is that because it goes into your skin?
Yeah, it goes through your skin, yeah. Mhm.
It's such a minute amount of it.
That's right, yeah, it's really dangerous stuff, yeah, really dangerous. So, his friends are bringing fentanyl to Job, trying to make a connection here. Yeah, are I think one of the most important matters that a human being has to come to grips with has to do with cause and effect.
Cause of what?
Cause and effect, cause and effect.
Cause and effect.
I think so. I think so. Shall we meet another friend? Next week, we're going to take a look at Job praying to God that God would not kill these friends. I'm not kidding. Talk about compassion, right? I'll give you a little heads up. The one that has compassion is the guy with all the sores and lost everything, right? Blessed are those who grieve, right? He's an example of it. God, do not kill my friends.
Well, they know not what to do.
There you go.
This seems so strange to me because at the very beginning, God tells Satan when he makes his pact that Job is a good and holy man.
Right.
And then here these three people coming,
Right.
his friends,
It's horrible.
they're disputing God's
I know. The whole thing is crazy.
judgment of him, right?
You can't make this stuff up. Is it? Are we at 18? I got this. Yeah, 18. Let's take a look at 18. Just meet them just for a minute. Bildad the Shuhite.
Then Bildad the Shuhite answered, how long will you hunt for words? Consider, and then we shall speak. Why are we counted as cattle? Why are we stupid in your sight? You who tear yourself into your anger, shall the earth be forsaken because of you, or the rock be removed out of its place? Keep going.
Yeah, keep going.
Surely the light of the wicked is put out, and the flame of the fire does not shine. The light is dark in their tent, and the lamp above them is put out. The strong steps are shortened, and their own schemes throw them down. For they are thrust into a net by their own feet, and they walk into a pitfall. A trap seizes them by the heel, a snare lays hold of them. A rope is hid for them in the ground, and a trap for them in the path. Terrors frighten them on every side and chase them at their heels. Their strength is consumed by hunger, and calamity is ready for their stumbling. By disease their skin is consumed. The firstborn of death consumes their limbs. They are torn from the tent in which they trusted, and are brought to the king of terrors. In their tents nothing remains. Sulfur is scattered upon their habitations. Their roots dry up beneath, and their branches wither above. Their memory pauses from the earth, and they have no name in the street. They are thrust from light into darkness and driven out the world. They have no offspring or descendant among the people, and no survivor where they used to live. They of the west are appalled at their fate, and the horror seizes them from the east. Surely such is the dwellings of the ungodly. Such is the place of those who do not know God.
What a beautiful passage.
So comforting.
It's comforting.
Don't you want to go there on your vacation?
Yeah. Now, the next time you go and make a hospital visit to a friend or family member, read that. Cheer
See how
up.
much worse it could be.
Right. See?
How good we have it.
Now, if you read the Bible a little bit, like the Psalms, there are Psalms that sound just like that.
Mm-hmm.
When I first met Norman Kohlenbrander, 40 years ago almost, he said, "Would you like to offer a prayer?" We were at a little Chinese restaurant. I said, "Yes, I would." We had never spoken to each other. "Yes, I would love. I'll offer a prayer. Lord, smite our enemies, bash their babies' brains against the rocks. And he's just looking at me like, you are horrible. But that's in the Psalms. It's in the Psalms.
Where was Norm?
Norm Collenbrander still is a mentor of mine. I've called him every week for 40 years.
The Psalms are pretty scary because I read through them when my husband had just died. I was looking for a good psalm to read at his service. So I was in the hospital and they had a lot of Bibles around and stuff. So anyway, I read through the whole thing. And there are so few that are kind of nice. Most of them are smack your enemies.
Exactly.
Throw them into the river.
Throw them into the river. Right. Are there any other books in the Bible that sound like this?
Maybe Jeremiah, I don't know.
Yeah, Jeremiah, Lamentations, the minor prophets, Amos, are just, they're just, you just want to run away,
Yeah.
right? And the writers here are aware of this. So they have the friends sound like different places in the Bible. They do this on purpose. Do you see what I'm saying?
From different areas?
Yeah. Right, they're together like we are, they're together. Well, what words are we going to put on the lips of these friends? Let's put the words that are like these thunderous denunciations. Let's do that. Let's take the Bible and use it. Right? Take the words of the Bible and use it on in employing the friends. You see what I mean? I said I think the first week, and I know I've said it from the pulpit too. The Bible is not a monolithic book. In other words, it doesn't reinforce itself all the way through. It does not do that. There's an internal conversation, conflict sometimes. Back and forth. There's lots of them. But this is I would say one of the big ones, if not the biggest, is this whole business of worldview and cause and effect. You deserve it. That's why I say in worship, we ask for grace, not because we deserve it, but because we need it. It's out of this that I say that. You see what I mean? But there's this internal, there are lots of Christians that want to what they call harmonize the Bible. So they do it with the Gospels. They want to harmonize it all, to make it all linear, like all four Gospels are just linear and they just work together just perfectly. They don't. It's not even close. And the same with the same mindset. They want to harmonize the Bible into one smooth story. That is not even close to what's going on. So the reader has to come up with, has to wrestle with an issue, and that is it okay for a holy book to argue with itself? Is that okay? And for a lot of people, they say no, it's not okay.
Tom, I think it was maybe in Sunday school or someplace else, I don't know. But the general idea we were given was that the view among the Hebrews of what was right and wrong evolved over the centuries, if you will, up to when Christ was born. That in general Judaism itself was evolving into a more compassionate.
Yep.
But I don't know if that's really reflected in the Old Testament. Maybe it does. Do you think the books in the Bible are in sort of chronological order?
No. I also think that it's more rather than an evolution of thought with Jewish theology. I have to think about that. But where I am right now is that the Old Testament is like, and I've mentioned this before. I see the Old Testament like a coal mine. It's coal, made of coal. But there's a thread of gold running through it. it will echo. There are many instances in the Old Testament where this happens, where you think this is going to happen and it doesn't happen. There's grace, there's mercy, there's understanding, there's compassion with one another, and also God seems to surprise us with grace, and which is really I think very beautiful. And then the question, the question will then move forward with impetuous theologians and others saying, well, maybe God changes too. And that's a whole nother, issue. Does God change? And people have said on the yay side, the people that say yes, God changes, they'll talk about essential character. If we change, let's say we change our worldview, let's say a big ticket item in our worldview, does that mean we're no longer ourselves? When St. Paul becomes a Christian, is he still himself? I think so. Essentially, his essential self is the same, but there's been a significant change. And then some theologians will say that's God we would include in that as well. There's a Whitehouse, is the philosopher Alfred North Whitehouse. Do you know that name?
Whitehead.
Head.
Sorry,
No, thank you.
someone.
Alfred North Whitehead was one of the philosophers that framed that out.
I don't know anything about his thoughts.
Yeah. This is a long time ago. We were reading that at Calvin College. But yeah, that's the argument. Can you keep your essential self and still have a major change in your worldview? And the answer, I think, is yes. So then they transplant that from people to God. So the experience, if God is real and Jesus has some special relationship to God, let's say, however you want to fill that out, when Jesus is going through his ministry, when Jesus is on the cross, when Jesus is resurrected, does that have any bearing on the person of God? Or is God like, yeah, we knew that, there's no surprise here, this is all part of the plan, that, in other words, God is not moved by the events of Jesus and other events too. I'm just using that as a big one. Or does something happen in the person of God when Jesus is going through this? And those that have a theology or philosophy of change, evolution of thought with regard to God, they would say yes. How could you not go through something yourself watching that? Even if you're God.
Yeah.
Even if you're God. That's not going to move you. That's not going to... is God a sociopath?
Well, God, in the beginning, he punished people, when they angered him.
Yeah.
And in the New Testament, it's no.
Right. And then theologians will say things like, well, we're getting into a whole kettle of fish, which I love, by the way. But, some biblical scholars will go back and forth to say, and they'll say something like, that's the people of God interpreting these events and placing God into it. Do you see what I mean? Well, let's say I hate homosexuals. I hate them. So 9/11, thank God 9/11 happened. The towers came down. Now I can say, God did that.
Because you hate them.
Because I hate them. But it's me placing disaster onto God. God is the mover in that. You see where I'm coming with that? And I think there's a lot of that in the Old Testament. That
It's not my fault.
Yeah, God did it. God did it. And because God is fair, they had it coming to him, blah, 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 and you can hear it. You can hear it, right?
God priorities with me.
That's right. That's called eisegesis, by the way.
I see, like.
Eisegesis.
Oh,
Eisegesis. It's this my interpretation of events, and I'm going to put my interpretation of how this goes onto God. It happens all the time. Happens all the time. You can see it in the United States all over the place, and you can see it right now in Palestine. Everybody's claiming God, right? This is happening because of God. Everybody's talking, they're all talking. All sides are.
Is it ISOGESS or something like that?
ISA, rather than exegesis. Exegesis is what we're trying to, exegesis is what we're attempting to do here. And that is a fair reading of the text,
Yes.
right?
You get out of it.
And just like you would read anything, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, a novel, watching a movie, whatever. You want to have a fair reading or a fair viewing, if it's a movie, let's say, without you throwing all your stuff on it. You set aside your own, how do they call that? Set aside disbelief, is that?
Disbelief, yeah.
Yeah, you set aside disbelief. You let it happen. You let the novel happen. Yeah, let it speak. And then at the end, you can throw your 2 cents in. That's exegesis. Eisegesis is you better conform to what my worldview says, or I can't even hear you.
That's a great word. I've never heard that.
Eisegesis. Yeah, we used to blame each other for that in summer. Because I think you have to have, and I've said this before too, you have to have a sense. If you're going to be a good reader, good watcher, or watching movies, or whatever you're going to do, and the Bible, and each other, you have to have empathy. You have to have empathy. You have to let the person, the country, the book, the Bible, whatever it is, you have to give them a fair shot and listen to them as they are presenting themselves, not as you want. And this is what we see with these damn friends, is they don't have any empathy. They're coming with their worldview, and they're going to hammer this poor guy with it, and because they don't want, their worldview is way more important than the person, and so they don't have empathy.
Maybe they're afraid
Terrified.
that it will happen to them if they're too.
Well, that, and also maybe my worldview is wrong.
Everything is
Right? And it all falls apart. I mean, the play, the book, Les Miserables, for instance, there's Jean Javert and right, the cop that's following, and he's been given mercy by the very person he's hunting. Jean Javert and Bill Smith, or I forget his name, but it'll come to me later. But anyway, this cop is chasing this guy down for stealing a loaf of bread or some stupid thing, and the guy he's chasing gives him mercy, and it destroys him, and he winds up throwing himself in the Seine, the swollen river, and drowns himself because he cannot stand the idea of changing his worldview. So he kills himself.
Javert, I think.
Javert kills himself. Yeah, some of those songs are just, they'll rip your heart out, Jean Valjean and Javert. Yeah, that's the two. I get those mixed up. Yeah, a lot of J's. So, here we go. And we've got the friends here that will not change their worldview no matter what. And with that Lenten message, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think is next week it?
I think next week is fine.
Huh?
Is this 4?
Today's the 11th, right?
I don't know, I should.
I think you got 2.
Oh, yeah, we have two more. Yeah, the next week is God finally having his say. God, it will be the friend as well. Yeah, he's gonna make a little appearance and have a little chat with Job.
Which book, which book does Paul, in the Bible, does describe Paul's,
Conversion? The Book of Acts.
where, sort of near the beginning?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought it was Acts. but-
Book of Acts, yeah. Yeah, it's pretty dramatic. Martin Luther had a similar.
You dropped something brown black.
Yeah, it was my lighter.
No, there's something else still on the
More?
floor. I picked up your lighter.
Yeah, it's under the chair.
It's like a black thing.
Oh, that's my cigar cutter. Thank you.